party people. Happy Easter. It is Easter Sunday. I hope everyone is having a wonderful Easter. And even in quarantine, I hope the Easter Bunny still visited your house, left you some presents. It's kind of weird. Ooh, good Lord. It's kind of weird for me personally not to be able to go to church on every Sunday, but especially Easter Sunday. It's been a different day. Been a different day on a new normal. But again, hopefully everyone has enjoyed it. Everyone has had a good holiday. And I'm going to make it even better by posting my lecture for chapter 13. Are you not helping? Okay. She's not helping. Anywho, so let's get started. Let's get rolling. I can get through chapter 13 pretty quickly. We hit Andrew Jackson yesterday. The start of chapter 13. We hit Andrew Jackson, hit the first few slides on chapter 13. Richard Lawrence, the fact that he tried to assassinate Jackson in public, first time a president had an attempted assassination attempt in public. Don't forget they've all had assassination attempts, but anywho, also as we get rolling, just a announcement that I went ahead and posted, instead of cutting the 15 slides on John Adams out of that PowerPoint, which just takes time. I went ahead and posted all of chapter 9 for you under files, so you've got the John Adams slides, and technically you'll have the rest of chapter 9 for you to use on your final that you take from home. Might as well, right? Just a little bit of another gift for you guys, so to have it just in just a few weeks. Again, just a few weeks. But anywho, let's get rolling. We'll finish up chapter 13 today. Again, pretty quickly. Chapter 13 is not long. There's a few things I'm going to have you look over on your own in this PowerPoint. As you'll see on your review, nothing big, just some littler stuff. But anyways, kind of introduction, picking up where we left off. So Jackson will not receive a third term. He wants it badly, but considering he made the selfish move to put a third term ahead of what was best for this country, long story short, as we saw, you see in the PowerPoint, the book, my lecture, basically puts us into an economic depression. So he didn't have a shot in hell, even though he wants it. But his vice president, Martin Van Buren, will originally get elected. And bless his heart, he becomes known as Martin Van Ruin. Which by the way, if you see his lovely picture in the PowerPoint, he is our president known for his sideburns. Just saying. The most interesting sideburns of all presidents. But bless his heart, he comes into a situation not as bad as the Great Depression. Don't get me wrong, not as bad as the Great Depression, but it's that same type of mentality where no president could have solved the Depression in 4 years, right? The Great Depression. And Martin Van Buren is in the same state. He comes into He comes into this country as president in a time that we are just riddled in depression, and no president, not FDR, not Lincoln, not Washington, nobody could have gotten us out of it in 4 years. So whoever was going to be president in 1836 was just walking into a lion's den, because he had inherited a situation that was impossible to fix in 4 years. But of course, the country, wants it fixed in 4 years, right? We want what we want, and we think that it's possible because we're American citizens and we know everything, right? So bless his heart, Martin Van Buren does the best he can for 4 years' time. Does get some things accomplished. Does get a lot accomplished, actually, but he doesn't end the Depression. And he gets raked over the coals for it, which, again, nobody could have. I don't care who is in office. Nobody could have. It just takes time for the economy to recover when it's as broken as it was. So Martin Van Buren only is a one and done. They started, instead of Martin Van Buren, they started to refer to him as President Martin Van Ruin, because he just went on continue to ruin the country. William Henry Harrison will be elected, who will be our oldest president. He is our first president of the Whig Party. The Whigs will get a man in office. He is also the oldest president, all the way up until Ronald Reagan. He is 68 years old when he gets elected. True story. 68 years old. He was the oldest president elected to date. He was the oldest president elected until 1980, a couple generations basically later. Generation and a few decades. Anyway, you get the point. But his an inaugural address. Again, first president of the Whig Party, so he was a Whig president, not a Republican, not a Democrat. He was a Whig. His oath of office was the longest ever in history. It was over 2 years' time. His presidency was the shortest in American history. Bless his heart. Literally a month. I know I have my days. I know I have my days in here. Yep. So, William Henry Harrison, again, 68 years old when he gets elected. His presidential term was exactly to the point. 30 days, 12 hours, and 30 minutes. Depending on the month, this falls just short of a month, right? Maybe it was just at a month, maybe it was just short of a month. If it's a month, 31 days, right? But, long story short, he falls ill with a cold. And the cold's a cold, right? But he's been under a tremendous amount of stress. You know, the campaign trail, and then assuming the presidency, plus his age, plus it is 1840. It's not like we have antibiotics. It's not like when you're that old, there's a lot of offers out there for you, per se, in terms of healthcare. So he gets a cold, and it ends up turning into pneumonia. And he will die of pneumonia 30 days, 12 hours, and 30 minutes into his term. Bless his little heart. John Tyler will assume the presidency and lead this country down the road towards, which is the lecture we hit next, the Texas Revolution. But that is a lot of presidents in a row. Again, Chapter 9 is all about the presidents, and then we move into Andrew Jackson, and then that's from Washington, to Adams, to Jefferson, to Madison, to Monroe, to John Quincy Adams, to Andrew Jackson, to Martin Van Buren, bless his heart, I feel so bad for that man, to William Henry Harrison, to John Tyler. That's a lot, people. That's a lot. And guess what? And in that 50-year span, from when Washington takes office till now, to the 1840s, a lot happened in this country, per se. There's a lot that went on inside this country outside of the Oval Office, outside of the presidency. I mean, it's not just our political leaders that continued to grow and thrive and change culturally and that type of thing. We all did. This country moved forward, per se. And we will get a whole, the urban landscape, as you will see in your PowerPoint. I'm going to cover some of these slides very, very quickly. You can look over them more in depth. If you do so wish, as you study for your exam, hopefully. Do this week, just saying. It is Sunday. Just saying. You have a whole week to take it. I'll get it up tomorrow. It'll be up tomorrow, so you'll have the Monday through Saturday to take it. Anywho, where was I? Yes. Okay, so urban landscape. We get a lot of immigration. The numbers of immigrants will flood through this country. We will have immigration stations open to try to control the floodgates of immigration. But we get immigrants from every part of the world, from South America, from Africa, from all over Europe, from Asia. I mean, it's country. It's crazy how many countries we get immigrants from. But of all immigrants coming from across the world, we will receive immigrants primarily from two. We will receive the most immigrants in the first half of the 1800s from Germany, Ireland. Great test question. Just throwing that out there. Great test question. Why do you think, if I was in class, we would be asking, why do you think that we would receive the most immigrants from these two countries? Anybody? Anybody? Lily, do you know? She says no. I was in my house. You should come be in the PowerPoint. It's my 15-year-old cat. She says, no, I'm good. Anyway, we receive the most due to, in Ireland, what do you think? Ireland. What is Ireland known for? The Irish potato famine, right? Going on right now. Over 1 million people will die off in the Irish potato famine. And it comes down to fight or flight. People are dropping left and right. So it means of survival, not to die, not to perish. You gotta go somewhere else. So that becomes the goal. So we have, hundreds of thousands of Irish flocking to the United States for survival purposes, and then obviously to start a new life. But we are not nice, let's just say. We are not nice to the Irish. We're just not. We have so many immigrants coming into our country in the first half of the 1800s. We don't want them here. They're not American. You know, some history has changed, some has not, right? We don't want them here. And so we treat them horrifically. And it's you know, we're all, we've all rolled our eyes at this, probably as kids, I'm sure, but as you're told stories of your great grandfather who came over to North America, you know, with just a nickel in his pocket and the clothes on his back. That's true, though, guys. That's actually true. And I mean, can you think about it? You've lost everything. It's that type of situation. Think about, God bless, it never happened. But let's just say we get into a nuclear war with one of these countries who are mad at us, you know? Iran, etc., for instance. We get into a nuclear war and then atomic bombs being dropped in the United States. Now, we survive. Hopefully we have a fallout shelter or something of that magnitude. But your house is leveled. Basically your city, your town is leveled. You know, people are dropping left and right. And before this, you know, war has been going on. You've already lost your job. The economy has crashed. You've lost your savings. You've got, dollars to your name. An atomic bomb has dropped. You know, everybody, friends, family are dying. You have the money in your wallet. And you know if you're going to stay where you are, you're going to die. You've lost everything else. I'm on the next damn plane to Europe, right? Let's just say I go to France. Per se, because it is known that French... Now, I'll tell you, the tourists, they're great. I've been to Paris more than once, and they're great to tourists. In terms of us moving over there and living there, they're not the biggest fans, right? So we have however much we have on our back. If we have anything at all our savings account, we have nothing else. We have no clothes. We have no suitcase. We have no supply. It's all gone. And we got to start over from scratch with just what we've got on our bodies in a country that doesn't want us there. That's the type of attitude immigrants are receiving in our country. Plus, so we don't want them there. We're not nice to them. We're not kind to them. We're not helpful to them. And we see the Irish as pointless because they just don't maintain the specific skills that are beneficial to the northern, which is where immigrants go, to the northern economy. We don't... the Irish, they probably should have gone south, to be quite honest, but nobody wants to go south because it's it is your slave boating part of the country. Nobody wants to mess with that if you're an immigrant. But the Irish are known to be farmers. That's what they're known for, right? They're known to be farmers. There's not a lot of need for farming up north. The north has become very industrial. It's become very conglomerate in a sense. It's a manufacturer's world. And so there's just not, the Irish don't come over with the skills that are applicable up north. So the Irish, bless their hearts, they suffer. They have a hard time. But you know what? To them, they're just happy that they're there. They can start over and they're alive. The Germans come over for a variety of reasons. There's religious persecution going on in their country, lots of poverty, political strife. And so things are just not good. Things are not good for a melting pot of reasons. And so the Germans are coming over left and right too. So Germany and Ireland are where we receive the two most immigrants from. Two countries we receive the most immigrants from. We accept and embrace the Germans easier. Not just like, welcome. We accept them easier. Hi, babe. Than we do than the Irish because they have more accessible skills. Because in Germany, there was a lot of industrialization. There were carpenters and blacksmiths and silversmiths and doctors and, the skills that we have up, that are looked for and sought for up north. So, not to mention, we really embrace German beer. we like German beer. We like German food. There's parts of the German culture that we actually like. So the German immigrants have a much easier time. Well, I should probably backtrack, because it's not easy. Nothing's easy. Everyone is on poverty level. Nobody's, comes over and it's like they're embraced. But the Germans just have a much easier time, setting down roots and becoming accepted in this country than the Irish do. What? Well, pick your cuddle spot. Mom is teaching. So, you see the North change. You see new cities like Chicago come to be. You see cities. I have a whole list of cities that were coming out. Blah blah da 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 blah blah. Cincinnati is being established. St. Louis is being established. Chicago is being established. So many different cities are being established. You start to see cities take names themselves per se. New York became the largest city in this country, which will be New York will be New York will be a title that holds it as the largest location in this country till about 1960 when California takes it over. You see cities like Pittsburgh becoming very much like a coal farmer's town, a coal miner's town per se. Lots of factories, lots of soot, lots of dust that become known that part of the country is the dirty part of the city, or dirty part of the country. Cities were very much like London back in the 1800s. You see neighborhoods being built, you see suburbs being created. So just lots of growth, but in between immigrants and cities being born and us thriving and coming up with new business ventures and manufacturing, and not only are cities being established, they're gaining reputations and they're forming identities, and our economy is continuing to grow and thrive, and new ventures are coming to foot, and again immigrants are coming over. That's all up north. It's all from the Virginia-esque, the Chesapeake Bay-esque area north. There's not a lot of growth in terms of commerce and manufacturing and industrialization in the South. There's a lot of growth, but all you see technically, you do have some cities. You have cities like Charleston and that type of thing that are there in the South, but primarily 95% of the South, you see growth in the amount of agriculture being produced and the amount of slaves being bought. The growth of agriculture and the growth of slavery. Because here we go. This is where we really start to be. We were kind of trickling. We were kind of hopscotching and then slowly wandering and meandering down the road towards the Civil War over the last several years. If I had seen y'all in class for John Adams, we would have talked about it during John Adams' presidency, because that's when the first brick, when you will see it, when you look at Gabriel's Rebellion, in chapter 9, under John Adams, that is where the first brick in the yellow brick road that led us down the road to slavery was set. It was the first brick of the yellow brick road was laid with Gabriel's Rebellion. And we slowly kind of continued to grow and stretch this road, here or there, nothing big. But from 1800 to 1840, the growth of slavery in this country will just explode. Originally, we were growing rice, hemp, a little bit of sugar along the coast. All different types of agriculture. But by 1840, the primary agricultural crop in the South has become cotton. The South is known as King Cotton, right? We're producing so much cotton that's being bought, that's being not only produced but sold. Cotton alone by 1840 will make up 50% of this country's exports. 50% of our exports, money coming in from exports to this country is in cotton alone. Every other type of agriculture, livestock, meat, furniture, clothing, machinery, every other product or good being created or produced across this country, everything else together makes up 50%. Cotton alone makes up 50%. That tells you how much freaking cotton is being grown, right? Holy crap. And of course, are us whites, American white people, going to be harvesting all this cotton? Oh my dear God, no, we might get freaking blisters. Awful. We are so freaking spoiled and entitled, it's insane. You do see the plantation life, the plantation, I think I'll be reading over at some point. It's either in 14 or maybe in this one and maybe in 15. The Plantation Mistress. You see that plantation aristocratic, life come to be. Massive, massive cotton plantations being created. And thousands and thousands of slaves. Which also tells you how much cotton is being grown is in the fact that some of these plantations have thousands of slaves, right? A slave, one adult, healthy male, $1,200 was the average. $1,200 was the average to purchase a healthy adult male slave. It's just it's a weird statement. It's coming out of my mouth. My God, that just does not sound good. But that was true. So you think about how many slaves were on these plantations that have been bought. And you think about how much money just one person is, unfortunately. And again, it's so weird how much a person is. I hate it. I hate it so much. There are so many parts of our country's history that are so atrociously embarrassing and just horrific. It's an awful topic. Awful topic, but unfortunately it's a huge part of who we were. It's a huge part of who we came from. So I'm gonna have you look over, you'll see some slides on Yaman farmers. If you are white and in the South, you belong to one of two classifications of people. You're either a Yaman farmer or you are a tenant farmer. A Yaman farmer literally are the people, long story short, and it goes to more in depth in my PowerPoint. But a Yaman farmer literally are those who own the plantation. They, Jefferson would have been a Yaman farmer. He owned Monticello. Washington would have been classified as a Yaman farmer. He owned Mount Vernon, right? He owned the plantation. He owned the slaves. But he wasn't usually there working it himself, right? In the end, he was. But, when he's off fighting the war and he's president, he's not there. So you get the point. They're the big dogs. They're the massive owners of the plantation. And it goes more in depth. They're the middle class. Most farmers were considered Yaman farmers. It goes more in depth in the PowerPoint. Make sure to read it over. If you were also white in the South, if you're not a Yaman farmer, you're a tenant farmer. And a tenant farmer is literally the same concept today of like a ranch manager, a ranch foreman. You work for the Yaman farmer. You're the one who is there every day, 12 hours a day. I could be a tenant farmer. I'm on the ranch, especially right now with quarantine. It's a curse and a blessing because there's nowhere else to go. Thankfully, we can still take care of our livestock. So I was like, sweet, I only have to technically go to, obviously I'm doing all of this for you, trust me, putting many hours in a week, trust me. But I was like, well, sweet, a little bit less of a workload maybe, not physically having to, be at campus. Oh, no. I probably knocked off, 5 or 7 hours a week doing this from home, and I probably added 30 hours a week at the ranch because it's just crazy. Anyway, soapbox. Hi! Excuse me, I'm teaching. Can we cuddle later? Hi! I love you very, very much. Can we play later? Don't knock my laptop over. Ruby, honey, not now. It's an earthquake! Guys, honey, not now. Not now. I love you, not now. Okay. I was on my soapbox. Let's get back to this. I would be a tenant farmer. The person who is there sun up to sundown. Every day of the week, it seems. In the South, in the 1840s, or by, 1800s, all the way from 1800 to the 1840s, which is where chapter 14 picks up. The tenant farmer is the one who is personally overseeing the slaves. They are the ones in daily contact. They're overseeing the running of the farm / plantation, overseeing everything. Hey, buddy. Oh, don't knock that off. Hi, I love you too. I love you too. Thank you very much. Okay. So they are the ones who are in daily contact with the slaves. And tenant farmers are usually the ones who are overseeing the grotesque treatment of the slaves. Now, again, we talked about this a little bit in class. Depending on what part of the country you are in, life may not be as horrific as on a cotton plantation. Because again, we still have the upper South and lower South. It's not technically classified of that at the time, but it's kind of it's still the whole concept of, we look at our country, the lifestyle that's kind of up in the New England area, right? The fashion, the style, the difference in prices, etc., etc. Cold water oyster versus warm water oysters. Oh my dear God, cold water oysters are more expensive, by the way, and they're about the size of your thumbnail. Just saying. I wasn't bitter at all when we went up there last year, and I spent way too much money on oysters, and they were as big as my thumbnail. It was awful. Anyway, again, soapbox. Teaching from home. Why not? No, so you have these regions, so you have the lower South still, which is now including places like Louisiana, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina still, obviously, etc., etc. So all in there, all the lands that we own. It will obviously include Texas, but that's a different story. That's the story for leading into the Texas Revolution, which comes in the next chapter. But if you're in, long story short, North Carolina, or Virginia, or Maryland. I don't want to throw out a name that's not true. So in the upper north, that's the area that's still considered the upper north where we see slavery. Tennessee, you may have a better chance of becoming an enslaved carpenter, an enslaved silversmith, an enslaved house builder, and you may end up working, being basically if you're a carpenter, you own your own business, you're an artisan, and you need labor. Continuous labor. You don't know, you're tired of people hiring people and them quitting on you, per se. Hey, buddy. You could buy yourself a slave. It's so weird to say. You could buy yourself a slave. Hi, I love you very much. Do we have to do this right now? Do you want to say hello this morning? Say hello this morning. Hello this morning. Thank you. Where were we? So you might end up, they buy a slave, so this labor for life. You don't have to worry about hiring anybody. You don't have to worry about anybody quitting on you. But you're working side by side together every day, which is just a different relationship. I mean, you're not buddy-buddy. You're not going to go get a beer together after work. But it's a different relationship than this overseeing authority, dark authority you would see on a plantation, right? Or you might end up having a much better chance of being a butler, or working some type of security position, which actually was, relevant, in the South. Nighttime security guard. You might end up being a cook. You might end up being a nanny. You might being a maid. So there were more options, long story short, as to where you might end up. Your owner might own 100 slaves. He may own just you and one other. He may have a small farm, not to like cotton. We do grow other agriculture in this country. And he may own 5 slaves, but there's still enough work to be done that he's out there working alongside of you. He's out there, picking those tomatoes right alongside of you all day, every day. So there's just, which usually, there's a little more respect there per se. There's a little bit different of a relationship. Sometimes, not all the time. There's still brutality when it's just you and one slave. It could still be a horrific relationship. But again, there's just more options. Long story short is what I'm getting at. There's just more options for you the higher north you go. If you are on a plantation, if you were in Louisiana, 98%, you still need maids. You still need cooks. You still need things of that measure. So about 98% of slaves in Louisiana, Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia, that area, 98% of you are on a plantation, and it's just the grotesqueness that you think of. When you think of, life and labor under slavery, it's what you think of. I don't want to leave anything out. Blah, blah, blah. Now, African Americans in the South. 94% of African Americans in the South are enslaved. 6% are free. You do have African Americans in the South who are free and are remaining there, believe it or not, by choice. WTF. If I've been a slave under that type of grotesque treatment and I've gained my freedom, I'm getting the hell out of there. I am going to friggin' Rhode Island or somewhere, right? I'm getting as far away from those conditions as humanly possible. Because just because I'm free doesn't mean I'm going to be treated any better than I was when I was a slave by whites in the area, right? They can't force me to do anything, but they can still beat me. They can still punish me. They can still lynch me. I have no rights. If you're free in the South, you have no rights. You have no protection. You have no whites who will have your back. The law is not going to protect you. It's ridiculous. So what do they say? Why are 6% of people of African Americans, the 6% who are free, why are they remaining in the South? Family. Just because they've gained their freedom doesn't mean the family has. They may have children, wife, obviously, husband, maybe. And while you probably can't see them, obviously, on a daily basis, for obvious reasons, right? You want to remain as close to them as humanly possible. So that was the biggest reason. It was the only life you knew. It was the only life you knew. You didn't have money to get north. You didn't have money to get to Kentucky or Virginia or Wisconsin, wherever you want to go. A lot of those states have been carved, yeah, just saying. Anyway, But you don't have the money to. You don't have the means to. You don't have the transportation to. This is the life that you know. This is your home. Your family is close by. They choose to stay. So, but it is this 6%, who again we talked about a little bit, well, yesterday, on Saturday, about New Orleans. So it's the 6% of freed African Americans who do go on to come together as a whole, as a community. There are strength in numbers. They, freed slaves, whites won't have their back, but, fellow freed slaves will. So they come together as a community. They form the city and found the city of New Orleans, which is where Freedom's Journal came from, right? The first African American newspaper. And so you do see this free African American community in the South, but again, only 6% of African Americans will be able to go there, visit there, live there, because 94% are enslaved. Again, depending on where you are, depends on the type of treatment you will receive. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We talked about that. If you have thousands or even hundreds, my lord, dozens to hundreds of slaves, and you only have one or two tenant farmers, one or two whites overseeing all of these people, how do you maintain authority? How do you maintain this sense of authority that still basically controls these people and keeps them from rebelling or revolting? There's 600 of them, there's 2 of you. How do you do it? By mentally breaking them down till there's nothing left. It is the same concept of a, battered spouse syndrome. I want to say wife, but it happens to men too. I mean, shoot. So battered spouse syndrome, where you just believe, it's a slow process. I mean, slaves already come into it with this broken mentality, right? When they're bought, their mentality is already broken, and this sense of just hopelessness is already set in, and then you just mentally continue to break them apart piece by piece, but not just mentally, physically. This is where we see a lot of the violence we've talked about before. We've seen a lot of beatings, the rapings, the pillagings. I mean, everything you can think of. We talked about in class a while back, about slaves. We've all seen movies where slaves take their shirts off and their backs are just nothing but just, this abstract piece of art, right? Of scars from being beaten. But a lot of people in the South wouldn't just stop at the back. There were people who were scarred from head to toe. There were people who had scars all over their arms. They had scars on their stomachs. They had scars on their neck. Scars on their face from being hit with a cat whip and lashed across the face. And I mean, there's stories of slaves who had either went completely blind or were blind in an eye from one of those cat whip strands catching them in their eye, cutting their eye, and they're not going to get medical treatment. I mean, it's just insane. So the beatings, there were actually attack dogs. It's like the same concept that needs to go away. Like yesterday, this thing called dog fighting, right? Dogs are trained to fight each other. I don't get it. I don't get who would do that, huh? It's the same thing. Dogs were trained to attack people. So the whole concept of sicking the dogs on you, they did have dogs who were trained. When they were let off the leash, they would go after you, and when they got you, they would rip into you. So sicking the dogs on them. Physically beating. I mean, mistresses. There's a video we watched back in the day where it showed, plantation mistresses whipped. She could whip her cook. She could whip her house cleaning lady. And, it was, the video talked about how it was a lovely Christmas present to give, right? It was a very nice Christmas gift to give these, slave beating tools. So you see things of that nature. You see, and then just the authority figure. I mean, it's just about as grotesque and horrific. There's really no need to go into all the different levels of violence, because we all get the point. We all know to some capacity, right? How did they live? Because again, slaves, by the way, work 363 days a year from sun up to sundown. Even slaves get 2 days a year off, right? How decent of us. Slaves will always get off 2 days a year, Christmas being one, ironically enough, the other being Easter, where we are today. The day Jesus rose from the dead, and the day Jesus was born, right? According to the Bible. So, they got 2 days off, but they were still supposed to work. Besides that, the other 30 to 63 days, from the day the sun came up and you could see what you were doing to when the sun went down, right? Where did they live? I have a quote. Where is my quote? Came from one of my books. I usually will read it to you in class. I'll read it to you right now. They would always have these shacks. They would all stay in these shacks, right? And there's Fanny Kimball was the wife of the plantation owner. She was writing in a letter. It comes from one of my personal references. She was writing a letter to somebody talking about their slaves, and upon speaking of the houses that their slaves stayed in, her own quote: "These cabins consist of one room, about 12 by 13 feet. 2 families often reside in one of these huts, which are mere wooden frames. These cabins consist of one room about 12 by 13 feet. Guys, the ranch that I work at, our horse stalls are 12 by 12. And those are small stalls. 12 by 12, some of them go up to 12 by 16. And that's so a 12 by 12 stall, which is a good size stall. It's a nice cushy stall for a horse. They have plenty of room. It's very comfortable. All the way up to 12 by 16. I like those better. Those are where mine are. Just saying. They have to have a little bit of authority. Just saying. Few perks. So in a 12 by 12 stall, big enough for comfortable size. I mean, I know there are some that are 10 by 10. Now I digress. But 12 by 12 is the preferred average size stall for a horse. Add a foot, 12 by 13, you could have a family of 4 living in that same space. And it's just a room. There's no kitchen. There's no bathroom. There might be an outhouse close, otherwise you go outside. There's no bedrooms. There's no beautiful living space areas like in my apartment. I mean, I got a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I got a bedroom here, I got a bedroom here, bathroom, kitchen, etc., etc. None of that. It's a room. It's smaller than what I'm freaking sitting in right now. And you got 4 people. 4 people living in there. And it could be more than that, depending on how many slaves you have. It could be up to 8. So, you think there are chairs and beds and things of that nature in there? Nuh-uh. Not so much. So, most likely, depending on how many people are shoved into this room, which, by the way, is porous, incredibly cold, wind blows in the winter, hot, humid in the summers, usually a dirt floor, no concrete, dirt floor, so if it rains, it's just mud. If you had 8 people living in this, most likely the adults are sleeping sitting up against the wall. The children could stretch out. If it was a family of 4, they could all stretch out. But if there were 8 people in there, that would be tough. That'd be really tough. So these tiny little rooms, and due to the hours that they work and the conditions they're forced to live in, because they're fed, but obviously it's the most menial. Life expectancy was horrific. I mean, go back to the 1600s when life expectancy was, 35 to 40 or 40 to 50. A slave's life would be 30 to 40, 25 to 35. Slaves, on average, people who were enslaved, on average, lived a decade less than whites due to their servitude, due to the conditions they were forced to live in. Right? So you have, infant deaths, mortality rates for African Americans, 50%. 50% of African American children born died as infants due to the unsanitary, horrific conditions they were forced to live in. It's so bad, guys. It's just awful. But there were children being born. There were children being born everywhere across the freaking, across the South. Because, again, family life was very, very, very encouraged. Again, if you're happy, if you do at least have a partner, it's someone to live for. It's someone to be there for. It's someone to lean on, right? If you're by yourself and you have no ties, you might be more likely to run away. If you have a significant other and or children, you're most likely not going to run away and abandon your significant other and your children, right? So family life is very encouraged, as was having children, because the more children that were born, well, at a certain point, when that child got old enough to work, that was a free slave, right? Saves you $1,200. So, hey, start popping out those babies, right? Free labor. And if you have, way more women than men, or whatever the case may be. And there's not enough, the numbers differ. There's always the stories of plantation owners or tenant farmers or yeoman farmers, having relations with their slaves because they disgustingly, sickly enjoyed it. Ugh. Or with the goal of impregnating them to have babies be born that were free slaves, right? It's just sick. It's so sick and twisted, it's not even funny. But so children were encouraged. Family life was encouraged, right? Because again, free slaves, and you're less likely to run away. And all families, by the way, would be saying, no, you had to work on Sundays. But you only had to work half a day. Now, and I'll tell you what, in Texas, when we get to Texas history, if you take Texas history, slaves in Texas did get Sundays off. Texas rocks, right? Yippee for us. We give our slaves a day off. We're so great. But they did. So slaves in Texas actually got the whole day off. Mostly across the South, those slaves got half a day off on Sundays. Because Sunday mornings, they were expected to come with their owners and attend church. So slaves would attend church on Sunday mornings, and then Sunday afternoons they would be working. All slaves were to go to these white churches. They could not sing along with the hymns. They had to remain completely quiet at all times. So when hymns were being sung, slaves had to remain quiet. Slaves were not allowed to sit. They had to stand in the back. They were literally brought there just to listen. You were supposed to listen and absorb the teaching, right? This message that the minister was shoving down your throats. And do you think the message that slaves are listening to on Sunday mornings are truthful? Viable? I mean, dear God, no. It's the ministers would take Bible verses from a passage telling a very specific story in the Bible with a very specific, inspiring, usually meaning, right? He would cherry pick one verse and then tweak it and twist it to have this untrue, biased version of Christianity that he wanted to feed these people. Prime example. Some Bible verses, and these are in the PowerPoint, by the way. Ephesians 6:5 says, "Slaves, obey your human masters with fear and trembling, and the sincerity of your heart as to Christ." Colossians 3:22 says, "Slaves, obey your human masters in everything. Don't work only while being watched in order to please men, but work wholeheartedly, fearing the Lord." Titus 2:9, "Slaves are to be submissive to their masters in everything, and to be well-pleasing, not talking back." And my favorite, 1 Peter 2:18, Slaves, submit yourselves to your masters with all fear. I can't read right now. What the heck? Slaves, this is still my favorite verse. Can you tell? Slaves, submit yourselves to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the cruel. Submit your human masters in everything, to those who are being nice to you, and completely submit to those being cruel to you. That's what God wants of you, right? Again, are these verses written to specifically talking to African American slaves in the United States in the 1800s? No, these are, yes, they are. There were, guess what? There was slavery all throughout world history. There was slavery way over in different parts of the world before this country was even a thought. Slavery has been around since the test of time. There's slavery all throughout the Bible. And those specific verses are just part of a larger story that has a much bigger and deeper message collectively if you go on to read the whole thing. But they pinpick those specific verses because they can tweak them and twist them to make it sound like God is talking specifically to these African American slaves and are feeding them this really biased, twisted, untrue version of Christianity that enforces what they want these people to believe and basically shoving his same mentality down their throat. God wants you to do this. God expects you to do this. God wants you just to lay down and let me beat you, right? I mean, this is what God expects from you. It's just crap. They're just being fed crap, right? And God bless them. Thankfully, most know that. They're not dumb. bless their hearts, they can't read the Bible themselves. Most of them are illiterate. That does not mean, they've never been taught to read or write. That does not mean for a damn minute they're dumb. These people are so intelligent. They are unbelievably intelligent. They can think for themselves. And they know the difference, in right and wrong. And most of them know enough about and have a strong enough belief. They're not going to believe this. They're going to sit there and internally, so they don't get seen, roll their eyes and tune this message out and just be there because they're supposed to be there and not even really listen to it, right? Singing songs in their head instead of even paying attention, zoning out. And then a lot of them would meet later, at night, once work was over for the day, once it was dark. They would meet in their own private church services called brush arbors and or hush arbors, because it was a very secret type of thing. And hold their own church services and focus more, because you did have a handful. You always did have a handful of slaves that at some point were lucky and been taught to read. And they could focus on, those who could read and could read from the Bible. They would focus on specific messages, like the story in the Old Testament. The story of Moses, when he came over, into Egypt to rescue the Israelites from, being enslaved in Egypt, and, parted the Red Sea, led all these, saved all these people, rescued them from their slavery in Egypt, returned them back to Israel. He parted the Red Sea, and he saved them. He saved them from this enslaved life they were being forced to lead. And they focus on these messages of slaves being saved from their servitude, and God rescuing them, God sending somebody to rescue them, and they focus on more inspirational stories like that, believing that if God did that for the slaves in Egypt, God will do, if they play their cards right and they continue to have faith, God will do that for them too. God will send somebody to save them too. And guess what? They're not wrong. They're not wrong. 4. Not long from now, we still have to hit the Texas Revolution, obviously, which will come next. But not long from now, God will send a present-day Moses by the name of Abraham Lincoln, who will do what Moses did all those years ago for the Israelites. God will is on the way, is on the path of sending a man by the name of Abraham Lincoln, who will end their years of servitude as well. History repeats itself in different ways, guys. But, long story short, that is where chapter 13 basically comes to an end. So, I told you I could do it in a one-stop sitting. So, chapter 13 is just not long. So, anywho, you have everything you need to know. I am fixing to get your test... Nope, it's Sunday. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to get your test up as quickly as I can. You'll have all week to take it over chapters 9, part 2. 11 and 13. All lectures are in here if you do so wish. If not, you've got everything else. You've got everything. Make sure to watch the videos. Your review is posted. PowerPoints are posted. You are good to go. You guys have a great week. Can't talk today. Easter's getting to me. Can't talk today. You guys have a great week. I'm going to reach back out to each one of you individually. Just kind of touch base again later on in the week. Make sure everyone's still faring well. Have a great rest of your Easter, guys. Have a great week. I will be back in touch soon.